special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I had an amazing week, but I have to tell you, I'm so excited. I mean, to talk to our next guest. One of my favorite songs is Superman, and I can't wait to talk about that. 100 Years isn't bad either. And if you like Battle for Everything, well, that's a cool one. But
So, yeah, absolutely. And that's why we have John Ondrasik on the show, Five for Fighting. How are you, John? And it's great to have you on the show. We got to chat back a little bit about music and being in Pittsburgh the one time, but now you have the big tour coming, and Greg has his first question.
well, cool. Well, hey, John, thanks so much for joining us. You know, did you always want to be a musician? I always wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, good to be with you guys. Yeah, thanks for the kind words, Greg. Yeah, my mom was a piano teacher. My dad was an astrophysicist. So I had this kind of mixed brain of music and engineering. And, kind of grew up. My mom started me at the piano very young. And she was wise. When I was 13 and wanted to go ride my skateboard and chase girls, she let me quit practicing. But I had the fundamentals of the piano. And I loved Freddie Mercury. I loved the Beatles. I loved Billy and Elton, of course. So I just started writing songs, and it was my passion. And I've been incredibly blessed, to do this, for the last, 25 years. And it certainly was a grind for me. I'm one of those 15-year overnight success stories. But yeah, Superman kind of, kind of gave me that break. And to be able to still have those songs in 100 years and folks sing them back to me, I think is kind of the blessing that any singer-songwriter would ask for.
Absolutely. And you think about it, how important your fans are to you of the success, right? Tell us about how much you love your fans.
Well, of course. I mean, when you live the dream, it's great to write songs, but singing them into your closet and have your family tell you how good you are, that only goes so far. But yeah, I mean, to have songs that kind of stand the test of time and to find, frankly, a new generation of fans. There are people that come to my show, kids come who were not born when I wrote, Superman, or there's people that were, teenagers, and when 100 Years came out, who are now in the second verse talking about their families and their midlife crisis that I write about in the song. So the fact that, new generations continue to find the music also is, humbling and satisfying.
Well, that's great. How did you form Five for Fighting, and how did you come up with that name?
Well, it's interesting. It was the late 90s. It was the age of Lilith Fair band, boy bands, grunge music. The male singer-songwriter was not on the radio. It wasn't 1977. And I'd made my first record, and the record company came to me and said, "Hey, John, we need a band name." And I'm like, what? And they're like, "Yeah, we need a band name. Nobody can pronounce your last name. It's the late 90s." And I just come from an LA Kings hockey game. Of course, all of you guys in Pittsburgh are huge hockey fans, and just coming off the Florida Panthers kind of surviving the Stanley Cup final. But so I'd come from a hockey game, and you guys remember hockey fans, a guy named Marty McSorley, who was Wayne Gretzky's bodyguard, and a guy named Bob Probert, who was this big fighter, and they got in a couple fights. And of course, in hockey, you get five for fighting. So when they said we need a band name, I sarcastically spit out, "All right, guys, how about Five for Fighting?" Expecting them to hate it. And they're like, "We love it." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It sounds like I should be opening for Metallica. There's not five guys." And they're like, "We're going with Five for Fighting." And 25 years later, there may be a disconnect between the guy that writes the songs and the band name, but I get a free hockey ticket in every town, and that's certainly worth it.
So I bet you also probably wrestlers like you too, right? For the name. There you go.
Of course. Yeah. It's the nice thing about Fight for Fighting for me is I've gotten to play some of the biggest sporting events in the world. Daytona 500, Monday Night Football, All-Star games, Kings Ducks outdoor game at Dodger Stadium, where I grew up, catching, fly balls and in the bleachers for batting practice. So, and the ironic thing is, John Ondrasik probably doesn't play those events, but Five for Fighting, that kind of has given the permission to play some of these events. So it's worked out great. And as I said, I'm a huge hockey fan. and I'm still fighting the good fight, I think.
So, John, do I understand it correctly that you have a passion to get students involved in music? If so, tell me about that.
Yeah, we actually just wrapped up a national contest called the Music Matters Challenge. We talked about my mom, and when LA Unified cut music funding in Los Angeles, she came in, volunteered, put on full musicals. I was Tony in West Side Story. Take that for what it is, whether it's talent or mommy's little boy. But 50 years later, those kids talk about what a transformative experience for that was, whether they went into music or not. And 4 million kids in America don't have music teachers. So we just completed this challenge where we're going to provide a music teacher for a school in need for 3 years. And it's a long-term project. It's called Let Music Fill My World. And our goal is to have a music teacher in every school. It's so critical for kids. It's not extracurricular. I've seen that firsthand. I think for those of us who had music teachers, we know that. So that's a big passion for me.
Wow. And it's just because it's something that they can't cut funding for the arts. And it's interesting now with, I heard the whole move from STEM to STEAM, or they're never going to say STEM anymore. I just listened to that last night. Is that true? So they're adding the arts to at least that part, to at least go to the push that we're going to utilize the arts, at least in education more. So that's good. Right.
I hope so. I mean, a lot of it is talk. Some of these folks think a music teacher is supplying a music teacher for 2 weeks out of the semester. Obviously, as you said, if you look at the data, the metrics, when kids have music, especially early in elementary school, they do better in math, in science. They're socially more better adjusted to be able to, have a discipline and work with other people and express themselves. Two things, especially in low-income communities, keep kids out of trouble. Sports, we know. Music is the other one. It allows them to express themselves, have a passion. So yeah, it's critical, and we have a lot of fun doing it. I wrote a song with some Chicago inner city kids called Let Music Fill My World, and they wrote the whole lyric, and now the whole world's singing their song. So it's amazing.
That's amazing. I do love that. So when you started out, you told us about how you got the name, and what was your hopes for the group then? How do you see that looking back now, and where are you headed?
That's a good question. I mean, for any artist, when you're fortunate enough to have a hit song, you just want to make another record. I still call them records.
Yeah.
And for me, every album, you mentioned the battle for everything, was to get to another one. And I made, 6 albums with Columbia Records. I was very fortunate to have a lot of radio success in the 2000s. But I've also been, writing songs along the way that were not on the radio, songs for our troops, songs supporting America. The last few years, I've written 3 songs about Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Israel that have not had one spin on the radio, but have had millions and millions of impressions and probably changed the world maybe more than 100 years. I was in Hostage Square a couple months ago singing Superman and my new song, Okay, kind of about October 7th to hostage families, the night Iran attacked. So when you have those kind of songs and experiences, you realize that it's not just about fame and fortune and spins and tickets. There are songs that matter in ways that I never expected they would. So that's certainly given me some energy to continue writing about the world around me.
That's awesome, because writing about the world around you and getting yourself to make sure that you, in your music, you can tell a story. As a songwriter, musician, how important is that story in your songs? I guess from how Greg and I have remembered your major songs that you had the most success with, it was just basically writing that hit. What gives you that inspiration, and how important is telling a story and singing? It has to happen in songwriting.
Well, yeah, every song is a story. Every story is a song if you can figure out how to write it down. Certainly, I came from the 70s singer-songwriters, right? To me, the golden age of songwriters, where there was a beginning, a middle, an end. A cat's in the cradle, right? You start somewhere, you end somewhere, you make a point. 100 years is a journey. So for me, all these songs are a sentiment or something that's inspired me, something that's made me angry, something that I see, something that I want to talk about. But it's been a little challenging the last few songs because certainly protest songs have a strong place in our history. You listen to the music of the 60s, you get a sense of the times in a way that no other medium can show you. At the same time, we also live in a culture where we have a lot of celebrities who like to lecture the world as our moral betters. So I try to walk that tightrope. You know, certainly, can blood on my hands about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Can one man save the world about Ukraine? Okay about October 7th. They all have a moral message, but of course, in this age, everything's political. So you try to be honest, you try to be humble, but a part of a role of singer-songwriters is to write about the world around you. And then you can look back in history and you have different viewpoints through music that I think is really important. And frankly, it's frustrating that more people are not doing that, especially now after October 7th, when all of a sudden, all of these people who like to talk about October, about human rights, have suddenly become silent.
Wow. Well, tell us about, your tours, recent tours, what's coming up for the summer, what's coming, what's presently going on and what's up in the fall.
Yeah, I have this great kind of annual kind of touring schedule where in the spring I go out with the string quartet and we play very intimate, smaller venues. We had a great show in Pittsburgh this year. It's always fun. We always talk about sports. We always talk about Mario Lemieux. We always talk about Sidney Crosby. Of course, you got Russell Wilson. So half the show's about, talking to Steeler fans. And then during the summer, we go out the rock band. And so we're touring all summer with the rock band. My buddies, for 20 years and playing larger venues. And then in the fall again, we'll do a string quartet tour again. So it's just a blast. We have so much fun. It's a family show. I tell everybody, don't worry about bringing your kids, bring the grandparents. So yeah, we'll be in the bus all the summer. We'll be with the quartet during the spring. And we have a couple, surprises, some concerts we're trying to put together on college campuses as well. That there's some kids there who I think need to hear some different viewpoints. So we were at MIT. I was there with Mattis Yahoo a month or so ago, singing for the kids. Nobody's wearing masks. We're smiling. We're having fun. So we'll be doing some of that as well.
So that's why you have the formula up there, right? If you're with MIT, you're working on you have that formula on the whiteboard. Now, what do you like better? Touring with your band or touring with the quartet? Same.
It's kind of like, what song of yours is your favorite song? It's like the nice thing is it keeps it fresh, right? Tomorrow I'll be doing a keynote solo by myself. I'll do some solo shows. So I think, if you only did one thing all the time, look, it's amazing, but it kind of becomes a grind. So to go back and forth from very intimate shows where you can tell stories, it's pin drop, and then go to, thousands of people outside on a summer night, singing, dancing, having fun. It keeps it all fresh. And I'm so blessed to play with some of the best musicians in the world. Most of my string quartet players play on Broadway. The guys in Five for Fighting are in world-class bands, and we all come together for the summer. They're all superstars. So just to go out with them, not only is it great playing music, but it's really kind of like your second families. And it's like being in a locker room, right? It's just fun every day.
All right. So Greg has this question that he asks all the celebrities. It's one that kind of wake us up in so many ways because you have to really think about it. But again, you have your formula on the board, so you're good. Good, Greg, your question.
I mean, you heard about his pedigree, right? Music and then that's physics and pretty crazy. Well, anyway, John, thank you so much. Tell me, what do you feel is the most important thing in life you've ever learned?
Yeah, that is a deep question. If you want to go back to Superman, what's the theme of Superman? It's not easy to be me. And certainly as a young man hitting his head on the wall of the music business, it was not easy to be me. But then when you kind of go out into the world and you meet our troops and their families, and you meet people with real problems. I work a lot with ALS and victims. When you go to Israel and you sit across the table from hostage families, you realize that most of us we have problems, but they're small problems. So to me, what I keep trying to remind myself, and sometimes it's not easy, but I think that the key to happiness is being grateful for what we do have. Sometimes it's not always good. Sometimes life can be tragic, but if you have gratitude for what you do have and you recognize that, it puts things in perspective. So that's kind of what I've learned and what I keep trying to tell myself as we kind of go into this very uncertain time. I also remind myself that I live in the best country that's ever existed on the planet. And we have freedom to talk about these, these situations and these arguments and these world events. So I think that's something, especially coming up on 4th of July, that is also important to recognize.
Amen.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Best place people can get tickets right now, John. Where can they go?
Fiveforfighting.com. Click on tour page. It's all there. Fight for Fighting Music on Instagram. John Ondrasik on Twitter. We're all there. Hope to see everybody this summer. And very interested to see what your Steelers do next year. So,
So what are you a fan? Who's your team?
we lost. I'm an LA guy, so we lost the Rams forever. So I kind of pick players. I got to say, I'm not just saying this. I've always been a Steelers fan. I like how they play, but I'm a Rams fan, and we have a great quarterback. We have a great coach, and we wrapped up the Stanley Cup. Now we have this long wait until football starts. So as far as I'm concerned, it could start tomorrow, but it should be a fun. And we got Harbaugh now in California, so it'll be interesting what he does with the Chargers.
So I don't know if this is going to be the right move. Okay, for the Steelers, I don't know. I know it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how that gels with changing in quarterback ranks, and how will Russell Wilson do? Is he still have something left in him? We'll find out.
I think he does. I think he does. Look, last year he had a pretty decent year, and he doesn't have to carry that team. You got a great defense. You always make the playoffs, and I think if you just ask him to just stay within his kind of game. Look, the Steelers always overachieve, and I think it's gonna be a very exciting year for Pittsburgh fans.
All right, we'll see, John. Appreciate
All right,
it,
guys.
All right, that was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto of Greg Hanna. Guys, take care.